What is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back. Next episode, Fantasy Headliners, where myself and Kyle have a little XFL football to talk about. Kyle, week one, it's right around the corner coming up here this weekend. You excited?
It is. Super excited. Just want some football back on the field. But I really think we're on to something with this XFL product. A lot of people writing it off right now. You know, the XFL failed once, the AAF or whatever it was called failed last year. Is this really going to be able to? But we got to support it. If you want football year round as fans, we got to come out and support it. So they've got a big TV deal. Games are going to be on ABC, ESPN, Fox, all the big channels. So make sure you tune in this weekend and show them you're excited for this product as well, so we can keep it on the field and have football to talk about all year long.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the biggest problems, just myself talking to people here off camera at times, is a lot of people are relating it to what it was when it happened the first time, and it was very theatrical last time, and you know, it was more based on the WWE product type thing. And people got to get away from that mindset. This is going to be real football with some different rules to really make it more exciting. I mean, we've covered a lot of these rule changes before. If you don't know about them, we have a video that covers the majority of the rule changes. I'll have a link to it down below in the description. But in this video, myself and Kyle, we're going to give you a quick preview of all the matchups coming up here this weekend, as well as a few players that somebody's a part of our Headliner Nation team here, Chris Kennedy. You may not have heard the name before. I'm going to have his Twitter profile up here on the page. He can be found at Chris Kennedy 318 on Twitter. He's diving deep into some XFL players, and he's really hooked us up with some good information. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today on this show. First thing we're going to talk about, Kyle, is what games are actually happening. I mean, they're going to be played on Saturday and Sunday. So on Saturday, the first game up is going to be the Seattle Dragons against the DC Defenders, 2 p.m. Eastern time on ABC. This is going to be, the initial kickoff for this league. A lot of people may have a lot of interest, even if you're not in one of these markets, just to see what the game is all about.
I'm ready. I'm excited to tune in. I'm going to have my TV on it, ready to go. Going to watch a little bit of the game, hopefully the entire game. But I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. Seattle and DC, again, a lot of people probably don't know any of the players on these teams yet, but that's why we're here. We're here to help you learn who some of these players are. And one name for Seattle that's going to come up right away, everyone, you probably know who Jim Zorn is. That's the head coach for Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely. And aside from that, there's a few players, but don't be surprised if you see some of these names and you're like, who the hell is that guy? You know what I mean? Because you're probably not going to know a whole lot of these guys, but give it an option. There's a few names that are a little familiar. The first name up here of somebody who you may have heard of, Kenneth Farrow. I mean, in the back time, and he used to be a running back in the NFL. Didn't get a whole lot of opportunity. Only played in the NFL for one season for the Dolphins in 2016. He only saw a total of 60 rush attempts, but he's a very efficient runner. He went to the University of Houston from 2012 to 2015, where he averaged over 5 yards per carry on 560 attempts. He also had 1,000 rushing yards and 13 touchdowns per season in his last 2 years of college. The guy has some ability. Never really made it in the NFL, but could make a name for him here in the XFL.
Yeah, so in a couple of notes, we'll start with Seattle in terms of like head coaching philosophy. Because if you're interested in the XFL, if you want to play any XFL fantasy, if you want to play any DFS, anything like that, you probably can't really go off just the players right now because a lot of these players don't have that big of a track record outside of maybe some college ball. So you got to look at the head coach and some tendencies and things of that nature and what their philosophies are. So with the Seattle Dragons, the head coach is Jim Zorn. Already noted that offensive coordinator Mike Riley. Sounds like the plan is that they're going to run a very quick West Coast offensive style of football. Riley in the past as an offensive coordinator is not really known for gaudy offensive numbers. He's known for eating up the clock, a lot of short passes, not a lot of down the field type attempts. So that could end up being the case with the Seattle Dragons team. Quarterback right now, Brandon Silvers is listed as the starter. BJ Daniels is the backup. So not really any names there that we know, like some of the other quarterbacks in the league. So Seattle might not have that type of offense that we're going to see that, even with these relaxed offensive rules, that's going to put up a ton of points right away. It might take some time for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a wide receiver that they have that may kind of fit that role that you're talking about. He's not really that big play threat. His name is Cassine Williams. He played 3 seasons in the NFL, kind of bounced around between the Seahawks and the Browns, but his sophomore year in college recorded 77 catches for 878 yards and 6 touchdowns. really more of that possession style receiver that could fit that type of game plan that you were just talking about. So he's definitely somebody else who you may want to keep an eye on if you're out there playing some XFL fantasy football. Heck, if it's PPR, maybe this is one of those guys that you want to take a look at until we get a little bit further in the season to find out, who more of these names are, to be completely honest. Let's move on to
For the
DC.
DC Defenders real quick too,
Yeah.
just to note, Cardell Jones, quarterback for the DC Defenders. He's got Pep Hamilton as his head coach. And Pep Hamilton, you know that name probably a little bit. When he was offensive coordinator for the Colts, they were third most offensive yards in 2014. He's had success at Stanford. His offensive coordinator, Tanner Engstrand, was also with Hamilton at Michigan. And then he was also the offensive coordinator at University of San Diego. This was a West Coast offense as well, but this was more of a one that's going to look for big plays. They do a lot of motion type things. So this might be one of those offenses that's a little fun to watch right off the bat, especially with all these different rules. They might be doing some trick plays and some fun things to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you probably recognize the name. A lot of people probably do of Cardell Jones. I mean, he was a 4th-round pick to the Bills back in 2016, but he only played in one game there in the NFL. However, he played 3 years at Ohio State, and that's probably where a lot of people remember that name from. He started 23 games, had over 2,300 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, and he won the 2014 National Championship against Oregon. That's where a lot of people are going to recognize the name from. But yeah, going in here to the XFL, he's one of the guys who will definitely be watching here on a regular basis to see if he can kind of turn it around and get something going there, since he never could in the NFL. Let's move on to the next game here now, Kyle. What about the LA Wildcats and the Houston Roughnecks? Now, the Roughnecks sound like a cool name. I'm just gonna take some time to get used to a few of these names, though. I mean, the LA Wildcats just doesn't roll off the tongue for me. But I mean, there's a few players and recognizable coaches out here that we should talk about in this game. Also, it's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern time on Fox Saturday afternoon.
Let's start with LA. We'll talk about them first. I am excited for Houston, but for LA, their head coach is Winston Moss. He's more of a defensive-minded coach, though. Norm Chow is their offensive coordinator. He does have a lengthy history working with quarterbacks. He worked with Steve Young when Steve Young was with the 49ers, so that he's been around quite a bit. For the Los Angeles Wildcats depth chart, they do have QB Josh Johnson. But outside of that, I don't know if this is really going to be that big of an offense. This is more the Wildcats are going to be a team that are going to be much more focused on defense and then controlling the football a little bit more as well. So I don't think you're going to see them take advantage of some of the relaxed rules that you see. So if you're targeting offenses, I'm probably not going to target this offense early on.
Yeah, not a whole lot. I mean, you mentioned Josh Johnson. He's somebody who was kind of an NFL journeyman. He played between 2009 and 2014. I mean, he's never really accomplished a whole lot, but he's 34 years old, and he is by far the most experienced NFL quarterback, I guess you could say, here in the XFL. So he has an opportunity. But also, their running back, Elijah Hood, a lot of people probably don't know who he is. Another one of these guys who really excelled in college, though. Went to the University of North Carolina, had over 1,400 yards rushing and 17 touchdowns in his sophomore season. Just never really got a chance in the NFL. He was a 7th-round pick of the Raiders back in 2017. However, the Wildcats, they used their 8th overall pick to select him. He should be a big part of their offense here going forward.
Yeah, on the flip side of that, with the Houston Roughnecks, this is a team that's probably going to try and take advantage of some of these rules early on with their offense. Their head coach, June Jones, if you've been an NFL fan for quite a while, the name might sound familiar. Back in the late 90s for 3 years was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. He has stops at the college level and the Canadian Football League level. And the one thing that a lot of people are saying is if you've had a chance to coach in the CFL, some of the CFL rules really roll over to the XFL as well. So there's a little bit of overlap. So if you've coached in the CFL, you probably are a little bit more familiar with how you can use these rules to your advantage. So that's definitely good experience for him. But when he was in Atlanta, 2 of the 3 years he was there, Atlanta was top 15 in yards and points. They were also in the top portion of the rankings for passing yards, but they were lower in for running back. So not really running the ball a whole lot. Quarterback right now is slated to be PJ Walker. Connor Cook, if you know him from Michigan State, spent some time with Oakland. He is also on the team as well. Sammy Coates is a guy that you're probably going to know as well. He's a guy that could end up being, if you're playing some XFL fantasy, a wide receiver 1 for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sammy Coates is by far going to be one of the top receivers taking in these drafts for anybody who does XFL fantasy football, not just for the name recognition. I mean, you did see him at times in the NFL there with the Steelers. The Browns didn't ever really excel a whole lot, but he was a third-round pick back in 2015. As for the quarterback position, you mentioned a couple names. I kind of see maybe Connor Cook eventually taking that over. It's kind of a toss-up at this point, though. I think, just another one of those guys that you recognize from college. Never really did a whole lot in the NFL, but he was a fourth-round pick back in 2016 by the Oakland Raiders. So the talent, the talent there is possible for the Houston Rednecks. They could have one of the better offenses here in the XFL. Let's move on to Sunday now. So Sunday, February 9th, first game up on the slate is going to be a 2 p.m. Eastern time game on Fox. It's going to be the Tampa Bay Vipers against the New York Guardians. Kyle, how do you like this matchup?
Right now, I probably have Tampa Bay number one in terms of my power rankings for XFL teams. One of the reasons why head coach Mark Trestman, he's known for big time offenses. That's what Mark Trestman is known for. He worked with Bernie Kosar at Miami back in the day when Kosar set multiple records for completions and yards in a season back at Miami. He was the offensive coordinator for San Francisco when they led the league in points, pass attempts, and passing yards. And most notably, he was the offensive coordinator for the Raiders in 2001 when Rich Gannon was the league MVP, and they had one of the best offenses in football. He also has multiple Canadian Football League championships, and he's also had quarterbacks who have won multiple MVPs in the Canadian Football League. This is a team that definitely has a lot of talent. Aaron Murray is their starting quarterback from the University of Georgia. He was a good quarterback in college, didn't translate to the NFL. Davion Smith is their starting running back. He's a guy that I watched at the University of Michigan. He's not an NFL player, but he's definitely a caliber of player that will fit well in this offense because of how hard he runs, how he breaks tackles, a lot of second chance yards for him. This is a really good team. I'm excited for this team. It's probably going to be one of the most explosive offenses that we see in the league.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a couple other skill players there that I wanted to bring up. Shontavious Jones, probably a name that probably hardly anybody has ever heard of. He was an undrafted free agent signed by the Saints back in 2014, but he's been cut and re-signed by 4 different teams in 4 seasons, kind of bounced around. Nothing really happened. He was a part of the AAF, the league that failed not too long ago, where he had 24 catches for 298 yards in their, very short claim to fame there. And also Nick Truesdell. He's a tight end. He was their first round pick of the Vipers. He's a 6'5", 250-pound athletic tight end. He's played all over the place. I mean, another one of these journeyman guys, but he's recorded 127 catches, 1,527 yards, and 38 touchdowns in 3 years in playing in the AFL. Definitely one of these guys that has the opportunity, especially in a smaller league like this. If you're doing some fantasy football, there's not a whole lot of tight ends to choose from. This guy could definitely be one of them to target as far as the Tampa Bay offense goes, because like you said, they could be one of the most explosive ones out there. What about on the opposite side of the football for the New York Guardians? What do you see for them?
Man, I don't know if I'm expecting a whole lot from the New York Guardians.
So they're kind of like the Giants is what you're saying.
Well, here's a little bit of a relation there. So the head coach for the New York Guardians is Kevin Gilbride. And if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because he was the offensive coordinator for the New York Giants both times that they beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Expect a wide open passing offense with this team as well. The QB coach, G.A. Mangus, he worked with Steve Spurrier at South Carolina when they broke records for points, yards, and completion percentages, school records. So they definitely have a good set of offensive minds there, but I don't know if they have some of the offensive weapons on this team that the other teams do. So I think that's going to be the thing that will limit them, is they don't have those weapons.
No, they really don't. I mean, quarterback Matt McGloin, that's a name that you may have heard of at a time, played 4 seasons with the Raiders from 2013 to 2016. He only started 7 of his 13 appearances. His rookie season, though, in 2013, had some success at some points. He completed 64% of his passes. That was good enough for 11th in the league as his rookie year. Didn't have a whole lot of weapons really surrounding him. And he also has a decent deep ball percentage. I mean, this is somebody who can throw the ball down the field. Do they have a lot of options down the field? They have a wide receiver, Mikael McKay, a 6'4", 210-pound wide receiver. Not one of these guys that you would consider a burner on the outside by any means. He ran a 4.55 40 at the 2016 NFL Combine. Played 4 years in Cincinnati. His best season being his junior year back in college, 44 catches, 725 yards, and 8 touchdowns. So that would be the top option for Matt McGloin going forward as far as the passing game goes. But like you said, some eerie similarities. Am I overly excited about the Guardians? Probably not as much as I am about some of the other teams. Last game on the slate is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks, another cool name, going to be at the Dallas Renegades, 5 p.m. Eastern. And this one's on the mothership ESPN. Kyle, what do you think about St. Louis's chances?
So I'm excited about this team as well, especially again looking at not necessarily personnel, because again we don't know a ton about the personnel, so we have to kind of take some information from other areas. So the coaches that they have, I really like the coaches that they have. For St. Louis, their offensive coordinator is Doug Meacham, which he was the offensive coordinator for the TCU Horned Frogs back in 2014 when they were second in the country, averaging over 46 points per game, and they were tied for number 5 overall in the nation in total offense. So again, they definitely have the minds there to move this team forward and to have really good offensive numbers. Now, again, you have to look at the team though, and you have to say, do they have the weapons to do this? Again, we don't know a whole lot about these weapons. Christine Michael is the big name. I mean, if you played fantasy football, you know the name because you probably tried to get a hold of him at some point in time, especially for Dynasty Fantasy Football. He was a guy that a lot of people tried to get their hands on. So I'm wondering if it's going to be a little bit more of the run game with Christine Michael. We'll have to wait and see. But again, they have the personnel there to really get this offense moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Christine Michael, by far the most name recognition player there on the squad, and he was their 6th overall pick there for St. Louis and for the Battlehawks. So he's definitely going to be a large portion of their offense. But you mentioned it right there. Dynasty owners, if you played Dynasty Fantasy Football, at some point you got excited about Christine Michael because it was always like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. He's going to get his chance. And it just never really materialized into a full season's work. Also, they have a wide receiver to look out for. Am I going to pronounce his name right? No, I'm probably not. But his name is Demornier Pearson L, I believe, how you say it. He's played 4 years at Nebraska. His freshman year really excelled as a return specialist, though. He had 743 return yards, 3 touchdowns. In his senior year as a wide receiver in 2017, had 45 catches for 623 yards and 5 touchdowns. So somebody who has that ability. Is he somebody to get overly excited about? Not quite yet. I really want to see a little bit more for him before we say, hey, this guy's really going to produce in this league. But that's one name that we definitely want to pay attention to. On the Dallas side of things, yeah, you got a couple players that you may really recognize. I mean, this is probably going to be another one of those teams that a lot of people can kind of relate to. They may hate it because it's in Dallas, and everybody hates a lot of things in Dallas. But, you know, Landry Jones is a quarterback. That's definitely a name that people have heard a lot at times in the NFL. 4th-round pick by the Steelers. He started 5 of the 19 games he's played in. He threw for 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns, but did have 7 interceptions. He was an Oklahoma quarterback, so he's not far away from home. He averaged 4,482 passing yards and 32 touchdowns per year in college. I mean, this is definitely somebody who people can somewhat relate to an NFL career here for Dallas.
Dallas is probably the highest profile team in the league right now, and a majority of that is because of Bob Stoops. You probably know who Bob Stoops is. I mean, he is the all-time wins leader at the University of Oklahoma, multiple Big 10 or 12 titles there, one national championship, multiple Big 12 titles, one national championship, I believe. And Landry Jones, I mean, he played for Bob Stoops. So there's that connection there. I mean, he was in that offense, so he's going to know the offense well. The one thing about Bob Stoops is he's always been very versatile with his offenses at Oklahoma. So when he had Adrian Peterson, they were a run-heavy offense. When he had Sam Bradford, they would air it out. So the one thing to look at here is the offensive coordinator, because Stoops has been able to switch back and forth so many times. What's the offensive coordinator done? Al Mumm, he loved to air it out as a college offensive coordinator, especially at Kentucky. So when you have a guy like Landry Jones who had that college success, spent a little bit of time in the NFL, having those things is really going to help out Landry Jones. It's going to help out this offense. Cameron Artis-Payne is the guy that you know at running back there. So they definitely, again, have the weapons in place, have an offensive mindset in place to take advantage of these rules and put up some decent numbers.
Yeah, Cameron Payne just never really got a chance in the NFL. He was kind of always buried on the depth chart behind, Jonathan Stewart at one point, Christian McCaffrey there towards the end. Never really got an opportunity, but does have that explosiveness to go out there and make a name for himself. So those were a few of the names that, so far we've identified as people that you need to watch these games. Like we said, though, give them a chance. Don't just write it off because, almost a decade ago it was horrible. It was a horrible product. Kind of try to erase that from your mind. Going forward, this could definitely be something. And we mentioned this in an earlier episode when we were talking about the rules for the XFL. I can really see here in the future this kind of hurting college football in a way. There may be some top prospects here in the future that if the XFL can gain some momentum, some of these top prospects may choose to go to the XFL instead of going to college for 3 years, make a little bit of money early, and then you have a whole nother dynamic that, could take the XFL to the next level.
Yeah, if this truly becomes a feeder for the NFL, then we have a huge product on our hands here. But that's why we decided to start doing some content a little bit early, because if this thing catches on, if it can outdo what the XFL of the past did, what was it, the AAF or whatever it was called, what they did, folding so quickly, if they can outdo all of those things, then I mean, they definitely are onto something here with giving this type of product on the field.
Yeah, and there's a lot of money back in it this time too. They got, the great TV deals. They're going to be on national TV every single weekend. I have a feeling it's going to be an interesting product, and as long as these new rules really catch on and people can see the excitement in the game, definitely something that a lot of people are looking forward to. I know I am. I will not be watching the games on Saturday because I will be driving. So I am reliant on Kyle to let me know what happens.
I got it.
Kyle hits me up on the regular, though, so it's okay. We're like always talking. But hey, that was our quick week 1 preview here for the XFL. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of questions. We have a lot of questions, but make sure, we try to be as interactive as possible. So put those questions and comments down below. If you have a question on something, we'll do our best to get you that answer and keep it as interactive. It's something that we're all going to be learning here as we go along. We're not sitting here claiming to say we know all things XFL prior to week 1. But we're going to do our best to make sure that we give you as much information as we can all throughout the season. And as long as you guys enjoy the product, we'll keep on talking about it. So for myself and for Kyle, we appreciate the support. Make sure you hit that like button. If you're new here, consider hitting the subscribe button. I mean, it may be the off season for the NFL, but that doesn't mean you can't subscribe all year long, because we're always talking football and we're looking forward to it. So hopefully you guys have a great rest of your week. Enjoy some football again this weekend. We'll talk to you later.